Now, one more thing before we're finished. We want to add the fret holes themselves, so the slots for the frets to go into. And that's actually, it's not going to be that bad. Let's go back before the this delete bodies here, so we have access to those surfaces again. And then we'll, at the end we can bring that back to delete the surfaces. But first, let's go to the right-hand plane and create a sketch and zoom way on in here. We're going to want to find this sketch here. This sketch is in our imported geometry. Down here it is the fret dimensions sketch. You want to show that. And then select all of the edges of that fret dimensions sketch, just like so. And click on Convert Entities, and it's going to bring them into our new current sketch, right? And then we want to add some dimensions to it. Okay, so this dimension down here, for example, we want to make this a driven dimension. We're just using this for reference, okay? We're going to reference this in an equation later on. So let's click OK. And then create another dimension, let's say right here, because we're going to need that. Then we can exit the sketch. Okay, so let's go back up here and hide that fret dimensions sketch again. And we're left with just this new one that we've just created. Okay, that's an important step. Next, we're going to create another sketch. Let's go to the front plane and create another sketch. Zoom back in here where our first fret position is. Grab the line tool and just drag a line, or click one end of a line and then click another one way on out here, perfectly horizontal. And one other thing, you want to make sure that this sketch is showing. This sketch, if we look in our original import here, it happens to be this sketch, which is the neck width sketch. Okay, use the Smart Dimension tool, select the outermost point on that, and select the outermost point on this, and create a horizontal dimension. Let's say it's 1 millimeter. And that way we know that this line is as wide and slightly wider than the widest point on our fretboard, which will be an important detail later on. And we can exit that sketch. And now we want to create our extruded cut. Okay, now this is going to be a complicated extrude cut, so pay close attention to all of these steps. First of all, the from operation. We want to offset that so that we're extruding from a point that is well above our fretboard. So we're basically extruding straight down onto the fretboard. Secondly, we only need to go one direction. So let's uncheck direction 2. So we're just going straight down. Thirdly, we want to check the box for thin feature, which counterintuitively means that we're going to be thickening this single profile to create a box rather than a single surface. And in the one direction parameter here, let's change that to midplane so that the center of our line will be the center of our box. Okay, so we actually want this now, instead of going through all, we want this to go up to this surface and then a little further, right? So let's change this from through all to offset from surface. So then we just choose the surface we want to be offset from. And right now it's offsetting outward. Let's reverse that offset. So we're going in a little bit. And then we can actually just click OK. And we now have a fret slot. Now the fret slot has the wrong dimensions. It happens to be, in my case, a 1 millimeter by 1 millimeter fret slot, which isn't right. So we could look at those dimensions and just match this up. So we could just edit this feature and then just make sure that this dimension and this dimension are correct, and then it would be the right size. But I would like to be able to control this from my master model, which brings us back to this sketch that we created with those reference dimensions in it. So what if we could take those reference dimensions and have them drive the parameters of this extrude? Now that's a powerful concept, and we're going to use that pretty frequently. So check this out. So let's start by going up to Tools, Equations, and under Add Equation, we'll click on this little slot right here, and it shows us all the dimensions for that slot. Let's start with the depth. Just click on that, and it says D1 at cut extrude equals, and then what does it equal? Well, we have to tell it. So let's click on this sketch here, double click it. It's going to show us the dimensions in that sketch, one of which is this 1.57 thing. I'll just click on that, and now we have D2 at sketch 6. So D1 at cut extrude equals D2 at sketch 6. So we could click OK. And now you can see that the depth is exactly the right depth. Okay, looks good. Let's add one more equation. Let's go to Tools, Equations, and then in the second equation, we'll say Add Equation. Click on our little slot here, And now it's showing us this little equation sign next to the depth. Let's click on the width equation here. So it says D5 at cut extrude thin equals what? And then we'll click on our sketch to show the dimensions for said sketch. You might have to double click it to get them to show up. There they are. We'll grab the width here, and you see we get D1 at sketch 6. So now our D5 on cut extrude equals D1 at sketch 6. Click OK. And we end up with a slot that matches that original sketch absolutely perfectly. And if we wanted to now that we have those equations in place, we might need to add a little bit of clearance in there. So let's go Tools, Equations. And if you wanted to, you could say it's the width of that sketch plus 0.01 millimeters. And then this one, we could do the same thing. We could say plus 0.01, and then click OK. And that's going to give us ever so slightly a tiny little bit of clearance right around this sketch. Very, very tiny, but it's just enough to squeeze something in there. All right, so fret hole 1 is complete. Let's add those others real quick and call it a day.